Welcome and thank you for joining us in tonight's webinar. So tonight we're going to talk about the topic of how we can move from goal to find our momentum and specifically to deep dive into the three specific invisible barriers that are standing in our way from where we are to where we want to be so that we can regain our momentum in the second half of 2025. Good evening, this is Michael and thank you for joining us in this webinar. So what I've done tonight is that I actually re-recorded this webinar that I hosted on the 29th of May so that you can get maximum practical value over a shorter period of time. So over the next 30 to 40 minutes, I'd like to share with you the maximum practical value. So let's just dive straight in. So before we start, I'd like to share with you this piece of research that was done by the American Psychologists Association, whereby in its research, it finds that 93% of people stay within their comfort zone and never get to achieve their goals. And out of the 7% that step out of their comfort zone, 6% of them gave up when they encounter some obstacles or challenges along the way. And only the final 1% persevere and went on to achieve their goals. So it is my wish that by the end of this session, both you and I, we can take one step closer to becoming the final 1%. So there are three takeaways which I'd like to leave you with by the end of tonight. The first one is to know what is exactly holding you back. Next is to trust yourself that you are capable of achieving your goals in 2025. And lastly, to apply what I call the Smart Bid framework so that you can redesign your goal that fits you. So those will be the three key takeaways that I want to share with you. But before we go into the workshop proper, I'm just going to take 5 minutes to introduce myself. So it took me 25 years to record this session for you, and this is my story. So I started off my career in the year 2000 with the mobile telco industry. I started off as a call center officer, and I went on to spend the next 17 years in the telco industry with M1, Singtel, doing various roles from local to regional, and the highlight being my last 4 years whereby I was posted overseas to Indonesia, and I spent 4 years with Telkomsel as a general manager. And in 2017, I took a pivot. I returned home to join the e-commerce with Alibaba Group, where I went on to spend my next 7 years with Lazada Regional Group. So in my last role with Lazada, I was a regional price president of Last Mile Marketing Solutions. Then on one September morning, when I was on my way to work, I received a WhatsApp message, a very short and simple message that says, "Michael, join us in room ABC when you step in." So I replied, "Sure." So I joined them in room ABC when I stepped in. And by 11 a.m. that same morning, I no longer have my laptop, I no longer have my staff pass, and no longer have my job. So I was retrenched on September 2023. So what I did next is I decided to use that setback to become my turning point and start to rewrite a new chapter for myself. The next thing I did was to launch my own coaching and training practice, which is Positive Minds, that was born as a result of that. So the purpose of Positive Minds is really to help professionals like yourself to rewrite your stories and to redefine your possibilities. So I went to spend the next 1 year undergoing a personal transformation to relearn and also to unlearn to become the person I need to be. And I'm very grateful that by the end of 2024, I became a certified coach with the International Coaching Federation. And by earlier this year, I also became a certified positive psychology practitioner, a resilience trainer, and I also launched my first group coaching program. So in this current season of my life, I'm a growth mindset coach, and my mission is to help ambitious professionals like yourself to gain the confidence of what I call a I can mindset, such that you can gain the recognition and the fulfillment that you truly deserve. And I think that is important because the truth of the matter is between where we stand and the challenges that are in front of us, there can only be one winner. And the best thing is we get to choose who that winner is. So what I'd like to offer you tonight is really a blend of the science that I know as well as my lived experience. So what I'm going to offer you is a collective insights from after more than 100 coaching sessions, together with the science of positive psychology as well as resilience, along with my own personal experience from my corporate days as well as from my personal life. So what I want to leave with you tonight is the exact system that has helped not just myself, but my clients to overcome some of the obstacles and challenges that we face in our career as well as in our personal life. And I'm very, very thankful that the approach, my approach, and the messages that I've been talking about has been recognized and published by some of the media sources, including News in Asia and LinkedIn News Asia. So that leads us to the agenda for this particular workshop. So what we're going to cover in this workshop is essentially three parts. First, we're going to talk about to uncover what's really holding us back. Next, I'm going to show you how you can actually rebuild your confidence. And lastly, I'm going to walk you through the Smart Fit template to show you how you can actually apply it for yourself and also what are some of the options after that. Okay, so with that, let's just dive straight into the first section. Okay, but before we start, I'd like to invite you to take a moment to reflect where you are today. So as of tonight, we are about 41% done for 2025. So 41% of 2025 is really history. We left with about 59%. So I just like to invite you to take a moment to ask yourself to see where do you stand right now versus the goal that you want to achieve in 2025. So from a scale of 1 to 10, just give yourself a rating. Where do you see yourself standing at this point in time? Okay, so as you are doing that, now, so the question here is, both you and I, we have a set of goals. So why is it sometimes that we feel that the progress is just coming so slowly? So I asked that question to a set of professionals. So in March, I conducted a consumer research. I asked a group of professionals and business owners, what are their top three barriers that is standing in their way from where they are to the goals that they want to achieve in 2025? And this is the results that came back. So out of the 55 respondents that actually took part in this survey, they actually cited procrastination as the number one barrier that is stopping them. So about 40% of them stated procrastination as the number one barrier, followed by self-doubt at about 28% and emotions at about 25%. So procrastination, self-doubt, or lack of confidence and emotions are the top three barriers that most professionals experience as they try to pursue their goals. So if you're feeling any of this, what I'd like to let you know is that you are not alone. And tonight, we're going to spend some time to deep dive into each of this. Okay, so let's just move on. Okay, so here's the thing. So all of us, between you and I, we have a set of goals from where we are to where we want to be by the end of 2025. Now, for us to achieve the bigger, better, and faster goals, it actually involves a series of changes. Because in order for us to produce a bigger, better, or faster set of results from where we are today, we can't be doing things the same way and expect a different set of results, right? So in order for us to get a better set of results, it actually involves change. So our desired outcome is actually the result of a series of changes, and specifically, three set of changes needs to happen. So the first one is in terms of beliefs. So beliefs are the stories or words that we tell ourselves on the daily basis. So are these stories and are these narratives or words forwarding us to where we want to be, or are they actually holding us back? Next is our feelings. So this relates to how we are feeling about ourselves deep inside. So do we really trust ourselves to be able to pursue our goals, or are we quietly doubting or even questioning our own ability to achieve what we want? And lastly, it is ownership. So ownership relates to how we show up on a daily basis, the things that we are doing, as well as the things that we are avoiding in terms of achieving our goals. So essentially, for us to get from where we are to where we want to be, involve three fundamental set of changes, and that is our mindset, our emotions, as well as our actions. So as you can see, from where we are today to where we want to be, and to get the results that we want, actually requires us to navigate through a series of changes. So with that, I think it's important for us to start off by first understanding our relationship with change itself. So on the left, you see a diagram, which I would like to explain to you. So on this diagram, it shows this is where we stand today, which is our comfort zone. And on the outermost is the growth zone. So the growth zone is where all our dreams, all our ambitions, and all our goals lies. So this is where everything that we want to be lies in this outermost layer, which is a growth zone. Now, from where we are today to where we want to be, it involves us navigating through two different other zones. The first one is the fear zone, that is directly outside of comfort zone, and then followed by the learning zone. Now, every time when we step out of our comfort zone, earlier on we said that out of the 7% of people that step out of their comfort zone, 6% of them gave up when they encounter any form of obstacles or challenges. And very often that is what we experience in the fear zone. Now, the question here is, then why is it that change itself and stepping out of our comfort zone feels so difficult? And what I'd like you to understand is, first of all, is that our brain is hardwired to protect our survival. It is not to make you happy or to make you feel successful. So let me repeat that. So your brain's number one priority is to keep you safe and not to make you happy or to make you successful. So when we understand that, then we realize that why is it so difficult every time when we step out of our comfort zone and when we're trying to do new things for the very first time. And the reason why is because when you step out of our comfort zone, our brain is literally scanning the environment for potential risk. So what the brain is actually doing is scanning our environment for potential risks that could harm us. So think about back in our ancestors' time, when our ancestors step out of their cave, it represents tremendous risk because they can be killed by predators, by the dinosaurs, or even by rival tribesmen. But in today's context, especially in the Singapore context, it is less of a physical harm. So what our brain is actually protecting us is less of a physical harm, but of an emotional harm. So what our brain is trying to protect us every time when we step out of our comfort zone is actually emotional harm. And very specifically, in this case, is protecting our ego and our pride from getting hurt. And that is also why every time when we step out of our comfort zone, when we step into the fear zone, we become ultra sensitive about how people might perceive us. We think that people are judging us. We feel vulnerable. We feel anxious. We feel that we are not enough. And that is the reason why, because your brain is naturally, almost literally pulling you back into the comfort zone to keep you safe. So that is the reason why it feels so difficult when we step out of comfort zone and we try to do things for the very first time. So here's what I want to leave you with is that resistance when you face the next time when you do something for the new for the very first time, that resistance is actually your first sign of growth. Because that is the sensation that tells you that you're stepping out of your comfort zone into your fear zone. So I want you to recognize that resistance as your first sign of growth, and that is normal, and it is not because you are incapable. And the other thing which I wanted to share with you is this notion about doing more. We often hear advices that says we have to do more in order to get the results that we want. So on this slide, I want to share with you why that may not necessarily be the case. So on this diagram on the left, this is a model or framework that was designed and researched by David Orr. So David is an organization psychologist from the US. So based on his research, what he observed is that what we perceive in our head or in our mind affects how we feel and influence the action that we take. So again, what we perceive in our mind affects how we feel and also influence the action that we take. And it goes in this way. And the actions that we take further reinforce what we think in our mind. So it goes in this cylindrical way in clockwise manner. So based on David's research, we operate at the optimum, the peak of performance at the middle, when the head, the heart, and our actions are fully aligned. And the reason why we feel stuck in most cases is because there is a conflict between how we feel in our head versus how we feel in our heart. So there is a conflict between the head and the heart. And how it surfaces in our daily lives, in most cases, is when in our mind we say we want to achieve a certain set of goals. But in our heart, we feel the opposite. it often come up in this form saying, I want to achieve a certain set of goals, but I am not for whatever reason. So there is a conflict between what we want in our head and how we feel about ourselves in our heart. So there is a conflict between the head and the mind, and sorry, between the head and the heart. And as a result of that, you realize that the actions that we take, in most cases, it is not aligned and is unproductive. And that is when, despite doing or taking actions, we might sometimes feel that it's unproductive. We feel stuck, we procrastinate, and we just feel that despite the efforts that we put in, we don't necessarily get the results that we want. So at this point, I would like to invite you to also reflect based on your own experience. Have you ever encountered experiences whereby you have put in a lot of effort, but somehow the results that you've gotten is nowhere near what you wish or what you want it to be? And you probably will experience this friction and this conflict between what you really want and how you feel about yourself. So over here, what I would like to again highlight to you is that a lot of times we feel stuck or we feel that the progress that we want is really not coming true. It's primarily because of the conflict and this friction between what we have in our mind and how we feel about ourselves. And that is why when we focus on the action alone, like what Nike says, if we just really just do it and focus on the action alone without resolving the conflict, we realize that it doesn't actually address the root cause, which is the inner conflicts. And that is why you feel very drained, demoralized, and you don't get the results that you actually looking for. So with that, I just want to sum it up. So what I would like you to know is that achieving our goals requires changes. So that is normal. For us to achieve the goals and the bigger results that we want, it requires changes. And resistance is your first sign of growth every time when you're trying to do things new for the very first time. And likewise, by focusing on the action alone without resolving the conflict in terms of what we want and how we feel, is not the most productive, and it doesn't necessarily lead us to the results that we want. So that is the summary for the first section in terms of mindset. Next, I will show you how you can also rebuild your confidence so that you can actually overcome some of the challenges and navigate some of the changes that is required that we just talk about. Okay, so then the question here is, then how do we develop confidence? Okay, so here's the thing. So a lot of us have this misconception to think that confidence is something that happens in a single loop. So a lot of time we think that we might have read some books, attended workshops, or listened to podcasts, or listened to the content that was, or advices that were posted by gurus. And we believe that we can actually gain confidence in a very short period of time. And in most cases, from my own experience, that is not possible. And here's the reason why. Because in order for us to build confidence, we need to first of all create what I call small wins or mini wins over a period of time. So we need to start to build these mini wins progressively over a period of time. Because when we do that, what we are doing is actually reframing and retraining our brain to recognize what has become possible now. In this, in the scientific term, this is a process that's known as neuroplasticity. So, and this is why it's important for us to create these mini wins, because again, it helps our brain to recognize what is becoming possible at this point in time. And that is what I term as creating positive evidences over a period of time. And this is also equally important because when we do that, we are actually creating positive emotions. So what this means is that when we start to create these small little steps, we start to create these positive evidences, we start to tell our mind what is possible, and we start to feel good about doing that wins that we have actually building up. So this is important again because it actually helps us to feel good about doing these incremental wins, and not just that, it helps us to feel good in terms of pursuing the ultimate goal that we're working towards, and that is very important. Now, so then how can we create what I call the positive evidences? So as we learned from the previous slide, so confidence is a result of accumulating positive evidences. And positive evidence itself is actually first person experience. That means it comes from the action that you're doing on a daily basis. Now, you might wonder, early on, I said that taking action itself is not the answer to everything. But now I'm saying that positive evidence is a result of taking action. So what I meant here is that when we create those mini wins, we are creating first person experience. And then as a result of that, we are actually creating positive evidence. And this is important because our brain can then learn through repetition. And over time, as I mentioned, the brain get to recognize what is becoming possible. And that is important because over time, it allows us to start changing how we feel about ourselves as we pursue that particular task and as we pursue that goal itself, right? Remember earlier on, we talked about the conflict between what we have in our head and how we feel in our heart. So when we start to create these positive evidences and we start to feel good as we progress and pursue our goals, we start to narrow this gap between the head and the heart and the conflict that is causing that friction. Okay, so this is how you can create the positive evidence. And this is a very simple exercise which take about 10 minutes that you can practice on your own to cultivate this positive evidences. So over here, we're not going to do this taking 10 minutes to practice this, but I want to share with you very quickly what each of this means. So first, creating mini wins. Again, this is about taking incremental steps to train and to demonstrate to your brain what is becoming possible. And over time, you can then reinforce that self-trust. The second one, which I think is very important, is visualization. That means that in your mind, you need to be able to picture how the success looks and feels like. So picturing yourself achieving the goals that you set up to achieve. And this is very important because our brain cannot create an outcome that it cannot see. So again, our brain cannot create an outcome or a results that it can't see. So if you look at it, everything that is created by mankind in this world started off with a visual concept or with a vision before it was being produced. And that is because our brain cannot produce something that it can't see. So visualization, the second step, which is very important. The third step is in terms of self-affirmation, because oftentimes the words that we use on ourselves holds tremendous power, and we also tend to be our biggest critic. So in this instance, what I encourage you to do is to, whenever you're in that position or in that space, I'd like to invite you to take a step back and to talk to yourself and to script that self-talk as if you are advising somebody that is dear to you. If you're a parent, this could be a child. If you're not a parent, this could be somebody that you love or a close friend. So I want you to imagine a loved one that is very close to you going through exactly the same thing that you're going through. And in this case, how would you advise this person and the choice of words that you use on this person? Use that onto yourself. So to practice self-love and self-affirmation. Okay, so I'll leave these three very simple exercise with you and you can practice it at your own time. So in conclusion, for the second section, in terms of confidence, you can actually, I want you to trust that you can obviously, and you can definitely build confidence over time and by developing positive evidences. And you can also trust yourself to train your brain to recognize what is possible now and that you are capable of achieving what you want to achieve. Okay, so with that, we go on to the next section, which is the last section on what Smart Fit is and how you can actually apply this to design goals for yourself. But before we do that, I would like to touch on the topic of procrastination. So earlier on in the survey, at the beginning of the session, I shared with you, I actually did a consumer research and procrastination came up as the number one barrier that most professionals face. Now, the question here then is, why do we procrastinate? So what I want to share with you here is what I term as the procrastination equation. So this is something which I developed. So basically, I think in most cases, we believe that we tend to procrastinate on the specific task when the effort required or rather when it requires a huge level of effort and a high level of discomfort. So again, in most cases, we tend to procrastinate on the task if the task itself involves a high level of effort or a huge level of discomfort. Now, after more than 100 coaching sessions, I find that yes, these two elements are true, but there's actually a third element. And that third element is what I term as the expected outcome. So we tend to procrastinate when the expected outcome is, as we perceive it to be insignificant, low impact, or it could even feel embarrassing at the start. So we tend to procrastinate again, not just because it requires a big effort and a high level of discomfort. In most cases, we tend to procrastinate when the outcome of our effort, we perceive it to be insignificant, low impact, or it can even bring embarrassment to us. So now I'd like to take this a step further by inviting you to think of a specific task that you might be procrastinating on in the first 5 months of 2025. So have that task in mind. So now what I'd like you to think about is, given that task that you have been procrastinating on, and given if you have to go through exactly the same level of effort that you have gone through with the same level of discomfort that you're expecting, but now instead of the realistic outcome or the expected outcome, you'll be getting your desired or your ideal outcome. So what this means is that having you to go through the same level of effort and discomfort, you will get exactly what you want, the perfect results and the perfect outcome. Now, the question here is, would you still be procrastinating or would you be taking action? I know I'm definitely will be taking action if I can get the ideal outcome. So what that tells us here is that we procrastinate not because of a lack of effort, knowledge, or time. Rather, we tend to procrastinate when the expected outcome hurts our ego. So again, this relates to what I shared earlier on, that our brain is consciously trying to protect us from emotional harm, specifically from our ego and our pride from getting hurt. And this is also partly why we tend to procrastinate when, again, from my own experience, is that when the outcome is something that we are not proud of or we can even feel embarrassed about. So here is, again, a very short exercise that I want to share with you on how you can rebalance your own procrastination equation. So very quickly, I just want to share with you, and you can practice this at your own time as well. So over here, there are three elements to it in terms of effort, discomfort, and expectation. So in terms of effort, this is how you can shift from I feeling like I have to I choose to. So how can you then reframe that effort in your mind from feeling like it's a chore into a choice? So instead of I have to into I choose to. And that is very powerful because now what your brain perceived as a chore has become a choice. And more importantly, it becomes your choice. Okay, so the next one is in terms of discomfort. And this is where you can actually reframe again that conversation that you have with yourself by adding a very simple term to it, which is yet, Y-E-T. And this is actually developed by Professor Carol Dweck, which is the researcher responsible for discovering the growth mindset. So in her research, what she said is that when we include the word yet, Y-E-T, into this statement like, I'm not good, I'm not ready. So instead of saying I'm not good, you can say that I'm not good yet. And instead of I'm not ready, you can reframe it to I'm not ready yet. And this is very powerful because then it changed the entire conversation in your mind from a full stop to become a comma. Okay, so it reminds yourself that you're a work in progress, and that itself is important. And lastly is expectation. So how can you actually change the expected outcome of what it should be into something of why you are doing this, and again, from what it should be to what I want to. Again, so this is about reframing your expectation of the expected outcome. Instead of thinking about what it should look like or what it should be, you can reframe it to say that this is your intention. So you can move from expectation to intention by using the words like, this is what I want to do and why. Okay, so this is three very simple steps you can actually practice to recalibrate your own procrastination equation. But next, what I wanted to share with you is to ask yourself. So as we look into the second half of this year, for your second half goals, are they worth the effort based on how you're feeling and what you are expecting? On that note, I'd like to move on to the Smart Fit framework. But before we go into the Smart Fit, first of all, I would like to share, talk a little bit in terms of the Smart framework itself. So on the left, this is the Smart goal setting framework that most of us are familiar with. So Smart stands for being specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, also relevant, and time-based. So while the SMART framework is wonderful, but based on my own experience and from my coaching sessions, I realized that it actually poses three fundamental limitations. So the first one is that the framework itself is very goal focused. So what this means is that using a SMART framework, we usually focus on what do I want to achieve out of this goal. So it's focused on the goal itself. The second one is that it's very near term. Because again, when we talk about it's time bound, we usually look at the goal itself at a very relatively short period of time. So it's very near term focus in terms of how we want to achieve this particular goal within this short period of time. And lastly, the framework itself focus on individual goals. So what this means is that assuming if you're working on a project that has got multiple goals, then chances are you'll have a smart framework being applied to each of these goals. So you end up having multiple goals with each individual smart framework, as opposed to having a framework that pulls everything and all the goals into a solidified one. So that is the three limitations which I found from the smart framework itself. So what I've done here is that I've actually overlaid it with what I call the fit element FIT to further complement and to address some of these limitations which I just mentioned. So essentially what does fit means is that F stands for feels good. So what this means is that instead of us just focusing on the goal itself, it allows us to focus on you as an individual instead. So the question here is that it asks, how does the goal aligns with you in terms of your values, your strengths, and your personality? So it no longer just look at the goal itself, but now it actually look anchors on you as an individual and taking into consideration your strengths, your values, as well as your personality, and whether the goal that you set are actually aligned with who you are. So it energizes you. Next is intentional. So what this means that is future looking. So the goal that we set is not just about this current moment, but more importantly is to ask, how does this goal serves your future goals and your broader plan overall in terms of how success looks like in the future and how does it lead you to where you want to be further down the road. So it's future looking. And lastly, is tactical. Tactical in the sense as in it provides very clear mini milestones or mini wins, as we talk about, to so that it can actually lead you in a very structured and guided manner towards where you want to be eventually. So it actually questions about how can you actually break down the goals into bite size, which is mini wins to create the positive evidences that we talked about earlier on. So next, what I would like to share with you is I'm going to share with you how this template looks like. I'm just going to share with you some of the key highlights, and then you can actually download a copy, and then you can also try to practice it on your own as well. So what I'd like to do next here is I'm just going to jump to the Smart Fleet template, and I would like to walk you through. Okay, so this is a copy of the Smart Fleet template that you can actually download and use it on your own. What I'd like to highlight to you is how you can actually navigate this. So on the left itself, you can see that this is actually based on the Smart framework, SMART. But over here, I've actually rearranged it based on the sequence which I prefer. But what I'd like to highlight to you, more importantly, if I zoom in a little bit, is the part in yellow. So you can see over here is that it actually asks you questions that is anchoring on yourself as an individual and not just on the goal or the task on hand itself. So for instance, over here under being specific, so it no longer just limit to asking you to describe about the goals, but it also asks you is why is this important, this particular piece of goal? Why is it important for you right now? And what does achieving this piece of goal tells you about yourself? And it also, in terms of relevance, for example, he asks you to ask a deeper why. So what you can do is to consider what are the reasons that actually prompted you to pursue this goal, and think about reasons that are bigger than yourself. So what you can do here is to simply ask yourself why 3 times based on your original answer. The other part which I like to highlight, which I think is equally important, is in terms of measurable. So in the original SMART template, most of these measurables are quantitative. So we tend to measure our achievement based on quantitative results, which in my personal opinion, I don't think that is totally fair, because qualitative is equally important. So for instance, if your goals could be to achieve X number of sales or X number of dollars in terms of sales revenue, so that could be a quantitative goal. But the journey of getting you from here to there, it may also help you to gain confidence. For example, your sales skills, your communication skills, your pitching skills, or even your negotiation skills. So all these soft skills are equally important, and they are qualitative, which I think is also important for you to recognize them as you move ahead. And that will, again, what we said earlier on, to build your positive evidence and to build their positive emotions. So this is the other difference. And I think the key difference lies in this other part, which is the FIT. So let me just touch on first on the F. So F, again, we talk it has to make you feel good. So in this case, you could see that it literally anchors on what are your strengths, what are the resources you can tap on, and also the people that can actually help you on your journey. On the flip side, we also consider what are the critical success factors that need to take place in order for you to achieve your goals, or rather have a more realistic chance of achieving your goals. And also to consider the counter efforts, which is what are some of the things that most likely will be standing in your way, the obstacle and the challenges that most likely will derail or demotivate you to make you give up of these goals. So it's equally important for you to recognize them and to pen it down so that you can actually address it before it comes. So this is the F and the I. As for the T, over here, quickly, you can see that I break down into phases in terms of the small wins, positive evidence, and more importantly, also to track your critical actions in terms of what must happen first in order for you to achieve your goals. So to explain that, I think it's easier if you look at this example. So this is my own example, which I created back in November 23 when I first started Positive Minds. So I just wanted to illustrate to you what we mean by in terms of trackable. So over here, you could see that I actually sequence my small wins in a very specific sequence, or rather a very specific order. And I also list down the critical action that must take place in order for me to create these small wins as well as a positive evidence. So to give you an example here, for instance, I actually put monetization as phase 5 right at the end. That's reason because if you look at it, I realized that these are some of the pillars that needs to happen for me at a point in time before I can start to charge clients or make money. So in order for me to do that, first of all, I must create my personal branding, for example, make a very thorough understanding of who my ideal clients are, what the challenges they're facing, and then create my unique value proposition before I can start to make money. So I just wanted to illustrate to you the critical thinking and the strategic thinking behind this template that can actually guide you in a very logical and a very strategic steps. They help you see what needs to happen first in your mini win steps before it can bring you closer to the ultimate goal that you want to set for yourself in 2025. So this is an example of how you can make use of the Smart Fit template. I'll share the link. You can actually download it towards the end of this session, and you can actually try applying this for yourself using the template over here. And if you need any references, you can refer to my example over here as well. Okay. So with that, we come towards the last part of this session. So, okay, so that is the Smart Fit framework. So moving along, what I want to leave you with in conclusion as for this particular section in terms of apply is that how you can actually apply, as I just went through the Smart Fit framework that you can use, making use of the template to align your goals to yourself, not just the outcome, but more importantly to yourself as an individual, to tap on your strengths, your values, your personalities, as well as to be conscious of some of the barriers or challenges that you might face. And most importantly, make them feel good, intentional, and tactical to make them fit you. Okay. So with that, what we have done tonight is essentially, in summary, is to address the three key invisible barriers that tend to stand in our way between where we are to where we want to be. And that is the beliefs, the feelings, as well as the ownership that needs to take place in terms of changes to bring us closer to where we want to be. And what I've done over the last 40 minutes is to share with you some of the science as well as some of the techniques and the framework behind how you can actually help yourself to overcome these changes in terms of understanding why making changes and to do things for the first time can feel difficult in terms of relationship with change, and to understand the conflict between what we want and how we feel and how that could actually jeopardize our action, and why doing more alone may not necessarily be the answer without deconflicting the gap between what we want in our head and how we feel inside ourselves. And then we talk about how we can actually create mini wins to build positive evidences, and that itself can translate into self-confidence. And lastly, the reason why we tend to procrastinate and how you can actually apply the simple technique to recalibrate your own procrastination equation. So with that, I actually use this acronym, which is STRONG. So with that, tonight, what I've shared with you is really a very top-down view of how you can move from where you are closer to your goals by building self-trust, resilience, ownership, and finally, growth. And underlying it is using the SMART Fit framework that align your goals to not just the task itself, but to yourself as an individual. Okay, so I'll leave you with this final minute of reflection, which again, you can do it on your own time, which is to ask yourself, based on the three barriers that we identified tonight, which is your biggest barrier and what is your one key takeaway from this session itself that you can apply to your own context. Okay, so to change our outcome, you must first become the person. So after this, you have two options that you can take to move forward. So the first one is you can actually self-implementation. You can do it by yourself by doing the self-reflection exercises in terms of building confidence and procrastination. You can that I shared, you can do it. And you can also redesign your own Smart Fit plan using the template that I'll share and to implement this at your own pace. So that is one option. The second option is I do have a group coaching program, which I call the Mind Masters program. So if you are curious to find out more, I'll invite you to schedule a free and non-obligation 30-minute strategy call where we will really look into understanding where you are right now, what are your goals, and what are some of the challenges that you are facing, and more importantly, what kind of support are you looking at and how can I help you? Okay, so this is the second option if you are curious and you're open to it. Okay, so if you are serious about your goals, achieving your goals in the second half of this year, what I'd like you to do is invite you to schedule a strategy call with myself by scanning this QR code. Alternatively, I would really appreciate if you find value in this particular workshop or this tutorial to scan this code and leave us a Google review, and that would be most appreciated. So with that, I hope you find value for what I've shared tonight, and I'll invite you to connect with me if you have not by scanning this QR code. Okay, so I'd like to leave you with this final quote, which I find to be very meaningful. And it says here, the man who wins is a man who believes he can. And I believe you can too as well. So with that, thank you for your time and thank you for your attention. And I hope you find value in the tutorial that I just shared.